This episode of the Buffalonian Podcast is brought to you by the CastSource Podcast Network, a podcast network built with and for entrepreneurs. We cover many genres, including sports, business, mental health, marketing, and entertainment. We feature the podcast shows such as Sports Bring People Together, Limitless, Saviors of the Metaverse, and The Athletic Mindset. Learn more at castsource.com/podcasts. And without further ado, let's get into the Buffalonian Podcast. The Buffalo Bills take home the turkey on Thanksgiving Day. And the Sabres have a pretty solid week, but unfortunately choked in overtime. Along with some Would You Rather, hot takes trivia, and more, this is the Buffalonian Podcast. All right, let's go. We are back with the Buffalonian Podcast. I'm Joe Callie, and I am joined today by Dom Loss. Fortunately, no Mike Marino. Hopefully, he's back with us tomorrow, but for the betting on the Bills. But without further ado, Kiko, good Thanksgiving Day for us as Bills fans here. What do you say? I mean, we did it. We beat the Detroit Lions, second time in Detroit, that week, and we took the dub.
Yeah, first time since the 2016 Lions at the back-to-back wins in Detroit. So it's always nice. It's always nice to win the NFL. It's always nice to know that you won, but you didn't play your best football. So there's a lot, to work on. And obviously, they have another short week this week in New England. Well,
Actually, a full week.
Technically a full week, but NFL schedule-wise, they're on a Thursday again. So don't reap the benefits of playing on Thursday and getting the 10-day break. But next week we'll get the mini bye.
Yeah, no, and New England's going to be a big game. We'll talk about that later this week. But the Bills-Lions game, like you said, the Lions were on a 3-game win streak before this game, and they played like they should have been. I mean, they played solid, and it took a lot to beat them, in my opinion. And the Bills, we did. I mean, it was a little bit tight in some spots, I will say, but I mean, a lot was good. And even with an injured defense, we didn't even have Epinesa for this game, as an edge rusher. And Von Miller was lost in the game. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit here, but we ended up pulling out the victory here and, took down that team in a hot 3-game win streak. Like you said, hasn't been since what, the 2016 season?
2016 Lions up there's been back-to-back games won Detroit. So
yeah,
no, it's a solid result. The process probably isn't to the Bills standards of they didn't play great football, but
yeah,
the Lions I think are a solid football team. Well, they're a good football team, but at the end of the day, it's hard to win, especially on the road in the NFL, and especially on a short week of all the things that the
extremely
Bills
short week.
Yeah, and it's their third game in 2.5 week and a half.
Yeah, second straight away game too. Technically, I mean, not really, but.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult to come off of, the 2-game losing streak, the way they lost those 2 games. After blowing that home game, you then don't have the luxury of having another home game. You got to go on the road again to Detroit with all the stuff that's went out with the snow, and then you have to play a tough Browns team, get the win there. And then you're on a short week, so it's definitely been, I would say, a challenging last couple months. Last month, I should say, for the Bills. And at the end of the day, they're probably right where they want to be at 8-3, knocking on the door to potentially host a home playoff game. And again, there's a lot to improve on. A lot of things went wrong in this game. And there's a lot of things that the Bills probably want to have back, but at the end of the day, you'd rather get the win than lose. So.
Yeah, right. A win's a win, no matter how ugly it is. That's how I've been looking at it. And, there were moments in that game where I was like, oh, the Lions are going to do it. They're coming back. But, I mean, a win's a win, no matter how ugly it is. But if you had to take a look at the game, who overall for you who stepped up and did what they needed to do to get that win for the Bills?
Well, I think, we've I mistakenly forgot to mention him on last week's edition of the podcast. Ed Oliver, Mr. Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
He always seems to have a big game on Thanksgiving. Obviously, had the strip sack against Dak, had a nice game against New Orleans last year.
Hmm.
He was big. He was really big. He was a difference maker defensively. Obviously, getting the safety, but multiple times on the goal line, making really crucial pressures on Jared Goff, and obviously he forces the fumble to kind of kill some of the Lions' momentum and recovers the fumble to be. So again, it was Ed Oliver really stepped up, especially when they lost Vaughn of
Yeah.
being that guy in the middle of that defense, to not only stop the run but get to Jared Goff and put pressure on Jared Goff. And he was big. I think Isaiah McKenzie had a really nice game. I thought they had
Yeah.
some nice touches from him, too, and nice little touchdown. Looks like the same play against Seattle, man coverage, just ran the over route, and believe he had 5 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. It was obviously his best game of the year, I think.
Hmm.
I think there was really close. He had a good game against Baltimore. Obviously, Miami, another kind of man coverage type team. And we're not going to, say too much about tomorrow's pod, but another man coverage team in the Patriots. I expect him to kind of have maybe
Yeah.
possibly similar impact. But he had a big game, and they definitely needed him to have one. Seeing that Diggs was a little quiet until the end of the fourth quarter, they didn't really utilize Knox. Davis had a pretty solid game. I wouldn't say he was great. He obviously had that.
No. Yeah, it wasn't anything spectacular. It was just kind of there.
He had a couple nice plays, and obviously Josh was just a little off. I think that was a little bit of the elbow. I think maybe the elbow's bothering him more than they're really letting on.
Hmm.
Um, and at the end of the day, they got the win, and those guys played big for them. And obviously, they needed every yard. They really need every yard, because I don't know how much longer that field goal would have been good if they didn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No. And I would definitely agree with you. Isaiah McKenzie for me was the big who stepped up guy. Especially a lot of people are saying it's that similar type of, like you said, man coverage, like when he really, really excelled in that Patriots game, December 26th of last season, the day after Christmas, where he was the huge like X factor in that win. And I think we're going to see that again coming up here against Belichick this coming week. Not to spoil next pod, but he to me was the big key to success on the offense, because he really did. He stepped up when other guys were quiet, and it was a pretty nice touchdown and a couple nice catches on his end, to really keep it in, perspective. But Diggs also, that last catch, that last throw to get them in a field goal range there. Allen really, big time playmakers, big time plays, and that was a saving grace kind of a play to get in the field goal range and just ice it right there and let T Bass number 2 do his thing. They did. The NFL, for some reason, when he missed an extra point, put the graphic of Dan Carpenter smacking the helmet on their Instagram. I was like, that media team's a couple years behind. That's the wrong number 2 for the Bills, but I would definitely say Isaiah McKenzie was definitely the standout. But if you had to pick someone who really, really just stunk, who would it be?
well, I think this is the third week in a row that a number 1 wide receiver. We talked about earlier in the year how good of a job the Bills were doing against the number 1s, really limiting their touches and their impact on the game. But this is the third week in a row with Jefferson against the Vikings, Cooper had a nice game for the Browns, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown this weekend had a nice game. I think that falls on the defensive scheme, and I think sometimes I don't think. They made good plays. I think were in good position sometimes, the defensive backs, but at some point or another, you got to eventually turn around and make a play. You can have sticky, good coverage as much as you want, but
Right.
A catch is a catch, and if you can't turn around and break up the ball, you got to find someone else who can. I think that was a little confusing why they didn't bring up Xavier Rhodes, from the fact of if they were only going to play Trey White the first 2 series of the game, and if they were only going to use Kyrie Elam very limitedly, it seems like that was kind of an odd thing to do. Obviously, now Benford being injured, he get signed to the 53-man roster. So I think that was odd. I think that was disappointing that they let the one target that the Lions consistently have go off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say just offensively, just the line was really bad.
Yeah,
And
very bad.
Allen was off. Again, I think some of that has to do with the elbow, but Grant, they lost Deion Dawkins. You can't foresee that. You lose your franchise left tackle.
Yeah.
And Questenberry is just kind of a replacement level tackle, but And then I don't think Ryan Bates is particularly great in the middle. I know he was having to play a different position than he normally plays, and then Greg Vedron was just pretty bad, and you had to put him in at right
Yeah.
guard. And then Spencer Brown, just I don't know what to tell you at this point. He was really bad again. 4 pressures allowed, something like around there. I think he had maybe 4 hurry, 7 pressures in a sack. Like, he was just really bad, and he got dominated the whole game at right tackle. And it's starting to become a situation where you got like a Dawkins when he comes back at left tackle. Does Questenberry move over to be that starting right tackle instead of Spencer Brown? Because I don't think Spencer Brown's warranted the playing time he's getting right now just by performance. I think it would be by draft pick. So he's been pretty bad, and so the offensive line was pretty inconsistent, and
Yeah.
it was a struggle. It's number one. I would also say James Cook was pretty mediocre. He had that miscommunication with Josh that could have led to an interception, and he was kind of just hit and miss. I'd also say just the red zone play calling needs to be better. They got a little lucky with Josh fumbling that snap, so he was able to run that ball in for the touchdown. And that interception really falls on I don't know if it's a great play by the linebacker. You got to give them credit, but it also falls to this offense being a little bit too predictable. And
Yeah.
the RPO, they've consistently ran the red zone. They got to be more creative, be more unique in the red zone. Teams are going to know what's coming, and it seemed like the Lions had a pretty, credit to them for being there, but that was just a lack of creativity and completely really shifted the game.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you. For me, it was the red zone offense. I couldn't really grasp what was happening. I think we're missing Brian Dable at this point because he had some cute little trick plays. He had like John Brown's throwing Josh Allen a touchdown in the red zone. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing like that going on. You've seen Allen throw these interceptions in the red zone these past couple of weeks where he's trying to hit Knox, and it's just like I don't know, like defenses are reading right through it. They know where to go. They know where to go to the ball. And I think they just, like you said, need to be more creative. There's not much going on that's going to throw anyone off or be shifty. And that's one thing you see even Dable doing in New York still. He's still running his offense like that. You know what I mean? I just feel like Ken Dorsey's missing a little bit of that flair that Dable had. But I mean, he's solid. I'm not going to sit here and say he's awful, but he definitely got to get a little more creative if you want to sway these defenses in a different direction and get these red zone touchdowns, you know?
Well, I think they got to do a better job of, I think, putting more motion in the offense because
Mm-hmm.
motion helps anyone, and then also play action. Need to use more play action. Josh very good in play action. It'll help out the offensive lineman to give those D linemen just a little bit of hesitation
Yeah.
to hang on for that extra half second. So I think just adding more of those type of plays because those are usually, giving Josh more layups. Again, as we talked about, like if they could do that,
Mm-hmm.
be more, a motion based play action offense, they should be good. And
Well,
right
right.
now, we're not seeing. Right now, it just seems like it's just a struggle. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
struggle to do stuff, and you get to second 2, and then it's all of a sudden it's third and 2, and it's like I don't even know if they're gonna be able to pick this up.
Yeah.
You don't really have
Yeah.
the confidence right now in the off. And yeah, they're top ranked offenses in the league in a lot of statistics, but you don't get that feel when they step on the field that they're one of the top
Mm-mm.
offenses in the league right now, just because obviously Josh is a little bit banged up, the play calling's a little bit off, and it just seems like I don't know if they lost their swagger per se, but it seems like they don't have that it factor that they had in the beginning of the year to go out and dominate.
Yeah, it's like that second Austin Powers movie, man, where he loses his mojo. They got to get it back somehow, you know? But
Never watched that movie.
you've never seen okay, well you got to watch all three of those. They're pretty funny. They're good. Mike Myers, good movies. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the play action's easy because then he hangs back and people think he's going to run. Like it gives that extra, like you said, RPO, and you have three options. You have him running, the running back running, or him throwing. So it adds that like okay, linebacker's going to stay back
I
and
don't know.
free someone
I
up.
don't know if they need to run on more RPOs. I think they run, fine on RPOs. I just think it's just regular play action be fine by me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the RPO is a little bit predictable at this point for this offense, and they got to find a way to diversify that.
Mm-hmm. All right. No, I mean, and one big thing to take away from this game is Von Miller was carted off the field, and I don't know. Right now they're saying he's definitely not playing this week. We figured that. I mean, I kind of figured that when it was a knee injury. Um, But do you know anything about anything further? I haven't really seen anything. Is it indefinitely he's out for a number of weeks, or is it kind of just in the now kind of a deal?
I think they're keeping it pretty close to the vest, but I think at this point, obviously he's missing this week. I think they said at the time he was going to take 7 to 10 days to get the knee swelling to go down. I don't think they were able to get, clear images of
Right.
how to recover from that. And I mean, sometime after this week, we're gonna figure out, can he play through it? Can he not play through it? I mean, it seems at least the most important thing at the time is that it seems like he's avoided an ACL tear, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
it's just a matter of he probably may have tore his meniscus, which would be a long process. Or does he have a partial tear? I'm not like well versed in this, but if he can be able to
Yeah.
somehow be able to maybe recover in a couple of weeks and be back by the last week of the season they need to win to get in, or is it that situation where he's out for the year? I mean, if he could somehow come back for the crunch time and just had to wear a brace and had to have surgery after the year, I think that's
Hmm.
the best case scenario right now for the Bills. And you see the Bills' schedule, and they have 4 divisional games left, but 3 of them are at home. And they got to go play Chicago, who without Justin Fields doesn't seem that daunting as a task at this point. And then they
Right.
got to play in Cincinnati, which is going to be a hard game. So, if you look at it and think maybe if they could somehow work a way to, you know, 11 wins and maybe he doesn't have to come back. I don't know. It all matters with what happens, I think, in these next couple of weeks to see what happens against Miami. I think that might be for the division. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean it's tough to see, especially a guy we went out and we got to go to the playoffs with and win the Super Bowl with, like for this we got him for the purpose of going there. So it would be it'd be pretty bad if he couldn't come back and play, especially because he is so dominant and he is the closer, as they call him. He closes out games and he's dominant on the D line. He's that edge rusher that everyone would want on their team. So it is going to be tough to play without him. But is there I mean, is Trey not Trey White? Is Greg Russo? Is he out for a considerable amount of time still, or is that still close to the vest too? Do you know?
No, Epinesa and Rousseau have returned to practice and they've been full participants the last 2 days. And
All
Sean
right.
McDermott said that they're, at the right direction. So if they play this week, we'll see. I mean, hopefully they do. I think that's what really magnifies this loss for the Bills. But if they can able to get those 2 guys back, I think they
Right.
have enough talent in the room overall in the D line to. I mean, they got everyone still in the interior all healthy for the time being, and it's because it's going to be a next man up mentality. But they have enough talent to get those guys back and healthy. And yeah, I mean, it was tough to see him go down. Happy that he avoided the ACL so it doesn't impact next year.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's just it's a guessing game, and I don't like guessing games, so we're just gonna wait and see. Uh, but it was nice. It was nice to see, everyone support him and him to see be in good graces, and it was also nice to see a fellow Buffalo player return to the field from an ACL.
Yeah.
Obviously, Von doesn't have that. He had one earlier in his career, but Shea Wright returns. Thought he was pretty solid, a little rusty.
Right.
Wasn't really targeted, but it was nice to see him get some snaps. I think maybe that was always the game plan. Always interesting that they decided to bring him back in Detroit on that turf.
Yeah. On Thanksgiving. Yeah.
But it was good to see him back out there. Hopefully, you know, they give him a longer. I mean, not hopefully. I think they are going to give him a longer leash this week, especially against more of a run first team. I think they're going to try and see, if he's able to get that part of his game back. And it was good to have him back out there. It's nice having your number one corner out there, even
Yeah.
for 2 series.
Yeah, even just for that little bit. I mean, we have to realize too, this is kind of like quote unquote preseason for him. He's got to dip his foot in the pool before he jumps in. You know what I mean? And work his way back up to where he was. And that injury is, as we know, I mean, we don't know. We've never experienced it, but I mean, it's really, really difficult to come back from, especially mentally going back out on turf after, that being the big reason that it got injured in the first place. Like that's pretty daunting. But yeah, like you said, it was good to just see him back out there and doing something, just being, out there with the team and leading that defense. So yeah, I mean, and speaking of returns, we got one more old Buffalo Bill coming back. John Brown has been signed to the practice squad. It's very that made me smile a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you. I missed that celebration in the end zone where he flails his arms all over the place, Um, but yeah, that was it's really cool to see. I mean, he was solid for us for all those years that we had him early in Josh's career. Josh knows him. I think that's great. They have good chemistry. That he's played well. But what do you think this means for the OBJ rumors? Do you think this means anything? Like we're not going after him. Like we picked up John
No,
Brown.
I don't think this means anything.
No.
I mean, I still think the Bills in the mix. I think right now the Cowboys are probably the favorites to land OBJ, but I think John Brown comes in to fill a gap for wide receiver 5. Obviously, they've been calling up Tanner Gentry, and I think they wanted someone with a little bit more experience to come in. Obviously, Josh trusts him. I think that's really important. I don't think Shakir really has the trust of Josh. I don't really even think McKenzie really has the trust of Josh, but I know Josh trusts John Brown, and if he can, he's only played 33 snaps the last 2 years. But if he can somehow, still have enough juice left where he could, defenses would have to respect him, and they're worried about him taking the top off the defense. It allows Gabe Davis to focus maybe a little bit more on the intermediate, Dawson Knox, Diggs. It'll open up everything for everything else. I don't think he's going to be a big contributor. Like, I don't think he's going to come in and try and be wide receiver 3. I think he's going to be wide receiver 5. That's going to play about 10, 12 snaps maybe, and just trying to be a deep threat. Maybe he catches one, but maybe he's more of just a kind of a player to, be a decoy and help get other people and, allow the stress of the other people to focus on other things in the receiver room.
Yeah. No, I mean, I 100% agree. He's just got to, fit in, do what he can, and do what's best for this offense. And that's just kind of be a just core wide receiver, not top, not putting up all that yardage, but just be there, be productive when he's asked to. I think that's the biggest thing at this point. But
yeah, it's nice to have another vet in the room has playoff experience with this squad.
Yeah,
and he's a solid player. Again, it's kind of an unknown at this point how much juice he has left, but I mean they worked out with 4 wide receivers, including J.D. Nelson, who's ex-teammate in Arizona, who's kind of a speed threat. So they obviously were looking for some kind of speed threat, and I mean he obviously got signed, so
yeah,
they must be okay with how much juice he has left, and it's good to see Smoke back.
Yeah, buddy, you know it. Gotta love the old guys coming back in for the ring. You know what I mean? Hopefully, crossing our fingers here. These divisional games are going to be big coming up here. But before we move into our Sabres topic, I just want to bring up the Sports Bring People Together podcast. Listen for entrepreneurial conversations with those in sports, and who knows where the chats will take you. But sports got us together in the first place. Find the show wherever you listen to podcasts, or simply visit sportseplus.com. Now, Dom, let's get into the Sabres right now. I mean, last night, yeah, he's got the goat hat on. Rocking it. Last night, the Sabres unfortunately lost to Tampa Bay in overtime. But other than that, they have had a solid week. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I mean, going 2-1-1, getting 5 points out of 8, it was a really solid result from a team that was on an 8-game losing streak.
Yeah.
So any points was nice. But it's still a little frustrating knowing that they should have had 6, and I think it's it's a little bit hard to realize that the first 2 games they won 7-2 and 6-2 in the week, to then lose in relation to a really tough New Jersey team. They battled really hard, but then to blow a 2-goal lead late at home to only get 1 point, so it's kind of a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's a positive week for the Sabres. It's their first positive week in maybe a month. So
a month.
So I don't think you could be, too upset as a fan, but I think that's pretty annoying, the fact of how they just absolutely just, I mean, it's a bad loss. Tampa Bay is a solid team.
Yeah.
They're one of the best teams in the entire NHL, but I mean, they dominated them and they deserve to win.
Right.
Straight up. So
yeah, to lose the lead on that and then have them win in overtime, that's definitely a sour taste in the mouth. I mean, I just like to see them hang around with these teams. I knew the Devils, that wasn't going to be any good because they're the number 1 team in hockey, I would say at this point, even though I hate the Devils. But they played a good game against the Canadiens, the Blues, and the Lightning too. They played a good game. They just didn't execute in the end and lost the lead.
Yeah, I think they played really well through the 4 games. Even in the New Jersey game, I don't know if I would consider playing well, but I think they battled against and they were challenging against a
Right.
very tough New Jersey team. Obviously, falling behind that game 2-0, making it 2-1. Anderson, was pretty good the whole night, but gives up a relatively soft goal. Not
Mm-hmm.
relatively, it was a soft goal, and the third goal really broke the momentum.
Yeah.
And they just weren't able to recover from that. And then, just a really, UPL played really well, I thought, against the Blues in that game, but
Mm-hmm.
the Lightning game is just unacceptable. I mean, you can't give up that many. I mean, you really can't give up that many goals. I mean, 6
No.
goals, a lot of goals, and it's funny to say that the Sabres scored 5 goals, but the the goaltender Brian Elliott actually had a positive goals saved above expected. So that tells you how great the Sabres were offensively in that game. That in all situations they were expected to score 5.23 goals to the Lightning's 3.65, and to lose that game, especially when you also then dominate. I mean, that also that takes apart special teams and stuff. But if you take that out,
Yeah.
they even dominated more in 5-on-5. They gave up 3 power play goals. So the special teams really let down the Sabres again, and it is just an incredibly frustrating situation, being that they've been playing average 5-on-5 hockey, and the reason why they're losing games is coaching. I mean, it comes
Yeah.
down to coaching at the end of the day, why they're losing some of these games.
As much as you hate to say it, because I do like Granato, a good developmental coach. You're right though. It does come down to coaching at the end of the day. A lot of these decisions that have been made, serious question marks around it's swirling around my head sometimes. You know what I mean? Like it's just I don't know. Like a lot of these, like we were talking line decisions these past few weeks. Like I don't know. It's just it's interesting because he's great at developing players, but now we're starting to see some faults, I think, when trying to get
Cracks in
this
the
team
armor.
up and running. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's frustrating from the fact of, first off, Tyson Jost has been an excellent claim. He's
Mhm.
played very strong
Yeah.
fourth line center role. He's played very well and deserves to be in the lineup. And you look at it as, okay, so you have the Sabres have always consistently had a pretty solid fourth line. From the log line of Larson, Oposo, Girgensons, like they've always had a pretty solid fourth line. So then they have another solid fourth line on the jog line. Yost, Oposo, and Girgensons. And then last year they did a good job developing a top line of Thompson, Tuck, and Skinner. And this
Yeah.
year, I think you found a bread and butter in the second line of Cousins, Peterka, Quinn. And we'll talk about them in a second, but they've been terrific.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of have a black hole in your third line. So, I mean, it's nice to
Yeah.
know that they have a solid fourth line. They have a very good and they have a solid top 6 now for the first time since the Lindy Ruff era. But at the end of the day, when you have a third line that's just a complete black hole against Caden, it's ridiculous. We talked about the Montreal game. They win that Montreal game 7-2. The expected
Mhm.
goals for the majority of players are positive, above 50%. A lot of players are above 80%. I believe the top 2 lines are all above 80%. I mean, the third line at that point was Hinostroza, Olofsson, Milstead. Hinostroza had a 35%, strictly because he was on ice for one of the goals.
Yeah.
And Olofsson and Milstead had 8%.
Mhm.
8, which is horrific, which is
Yeah.
like
No,
terrible.
we could go out there and do better probably.
And it's embarrassing because you see this game against Tampa Bay, and they really dominated the game. Third period, I think Tampa had a stronger third period than the Sabres.
Mhm.
But I mean, the Quinn, Peterka, Cousins line, that was 60% above, expected goals for. I
Yeah.
think the other two line, the fourth line was around there. First line was about 50%, so they were by average. And then you see, the Asplund, my boy can't even say the Middlestat Olsen line get a 3.63%. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like, and
No.
it's pathetic because you're up 5-3. You got
Mhm.
5 minutes left in the game. That line hasn't touched the ice in 10 minutes. They completely got benched in the third period, and Don
Yeah.
Granato gives them a shift, and what happens? They score a complete momentum shift. Now all of a sudden it's a 1-goal game. You take a stupid penalty, and they score again, and then you take another stupid penalty, and almost lose the game. You almost lost the game in regulation because you got your momentum stopped because you put in your black hole of a third line.
Yeah.
So I think that was incredibly frustrating. It's just a horrific coaching move.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't wrap my head around that. Like
yeah,
I can't.
first to have that line even first to have that even as line is just terrible
Yeah,
coaching.
and let
But
alone in a 2-score game, like you always say. 2-goal game in hockey is the most dangerous
Well,
lead.
it just doesn't make a lot of sense because he knew. I mean, I guess a positive of this entire week is that the Cousins, Paterka, Quinn line have seemed to be getting the second line ice time that they should be getting, and Granado has at least understood that the Millsap lines are his worst line.
Mhm.
But I just don't understand. I mean, were the other top three lines just so gassed that
You had
they
to throw
couldn't
him
go
out
the
there.
last 5 minutes?
Mhm.
I'm a little confused. You knew Tampa was going to push you really hard, and what happens on that play? Puck around the corner. Steven Stamkos outworks Victor Olofsson, gets to the front of the net, and scores.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't have it. You just can't have it,
No.
and it's really annoying. I mean, Owen Power had one of, if not the greatest offensive game from a defenseman ever.
Yeah. No,
He
he's been great.
he had an expected goals for of 3.83, which is one of the highest ever recorded in a single game ever when he
Holy
was on the
cow.
ice. So I mean, he's a beast, and he's arguably, you can make the case he's already their best player on the team. I know it's kind of a shocking thing to say with Darlene and
Yeah.
how Tage is playing, but I mean,
No, he's
he,
making a difference when he plays, though. It's not like outlandish to say that, you know.
no, I think it's one of those situations where when we came to the beginning of the year, we were trying not to get so amped because there was
Yeah,
an
8-game
8-game
sample size.
sample.
Yeah.
First week of the year, we're like, see, like this is why we had lower expectations. But I mean, these last couple months, he's just exploded,
Yeah.
and it is incredibly nice to see for this team. So I mean, look at the offensive lines. I mean, that's they're
One
yeah.
thing real fast.
What's up, buddy?
Just a note for our listeners out there. All those, statistics and percentages you heard Dom saying, if you see them floating around on Twitter, they've been pirated from our show. We've talked about those before. So, I just want to toss that out there. If you see them anywhere, you're here to hear first. You heard it here first. So continue,
Yeah.
Dom. I just want to put a little disclaimer out there.
Nah, we look around, get the good stats. But I think an interesting stat that's been presented on the defenseman side is the goals for and goals against on 5-5. Like, how are you doing? You're scoring goals when you're on the ice. I know that's a little bit like plus minus, but it's kind of an interesting stat to see. And a lot of the top dogs are all positive, even Yoki Haru, and then you get to Jacob Bryson, who's 7 for 21, 7 goals
Yeah.
for, 21 against, and then you get Fitzgerald 6-11, Pilot 6-8, Lyubushkin 4-6. It's bad. It's bad, and there's definitely a situation where you got to find that depth behind Power, Darlene, and obviously you have Samuelson back, so that helps out a lot in my mind. And even Yoki Haru to an extent hasn't been horrific. I don't think my opinion of him saying that he's nothing more than a third pair defenseman has really changed.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing the magic of one Owen Power to be able to kind of carry him
Yeah. His
at a
back
young age
must
of
be hurting a little
19.
bit.
Yeah, but that's a solid second pair. That's a solid second pair. Like, you can't
Right.
complain at this time. But then this is again thing of a little bit of coaching of, like, you just have a black hole in your third pair of Lyubushkin and Fitzgerald. Obviously now Lyubushkin's a little bit banged up. Took a shot at the end of the game from Stamkos. I think he injured his foot. Maybe I think it looked like it went off at the top of his skate.
Yeah.
So you don't know how he's banged up for, but also it's like the same thing. It's like, why are you playing Casey Fitzgerald over Lawrence Pilot? Like, because Lawrence Pilot and Lyubushkin actually have pretty solid numbers together on 5-on-5, and you could shelter those three. It doesn't make a lot of sense, that decision either. So you look at this team though, and listen, there's a lot of positives to be had, and the main positive that I will say is that there are 97 defensemen. There's 97 defensemen, 97 under 23-year-old skaters in the NHL
Yeah.
in goals above replacement. So basically, if you want to look at goals above replacement, it's like your average player, completely average. Doesn't help you, doesn't hurt you. Kind of just like, not, I don't want to say black hole because black hole means really bad, but
Mhm.
like,
It's like the third line.
you know what it is? You know what's a good example? Zemgus Girgensons. Not a guy that's gonna do not a guy that's gonna really advance you, but he's not like a guy in your line that's gonna kill you.
No, he's not a hindrance. He's not an all-star, but he's just kind of there.
Definition of replacement. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't, like, if you took him off your team, probably doesn't hurt you that much. If you add him on your team, probably doesn't help you that much.
Right.
Unless you're replacing him, getting him from a really bad player.
Yeah. +1, -1. He's just 0. He's in the middle.
So goals above replacement. So you want to be high. You want to have a positive goals above replacement. Rankings for the Sabres among the 97 skaters under 23 years old. Owen Power, 3. Rasmus Dahlin, 5. Jack Quinn, 7. JJ Peterka, 23. Dylan Cousins, 24. Matthias Samuelson, 27. So, what does that mean? That means like you have you have 3 forwards, 3 defensemen. You have 6 guys in the top 27. You
Yeah.
got 3 guys in the top 10, 2 in the top 5, and one of them is your 19-year-old defenseman. 2 of them were rookies. One's your superstar defense, and one of them's going to be your second line center, and one's them solid top 4 defenseman. So if you look at that, and you go, wow, that's a really promising sign of these 6 guys that are so young, but they're playing it at a high level. They're playing very well, and compared to their age group, they're tops in their age groups. They're playing very well.
Right.
And then you add that to Tage Thompson, who I believe is 25. I got to probably double check that. And Tuck, who's 26. Like, then you add those 2 guys. Okay, that's a nice core. Skinner, a little older, 31. But again, that's another top 6 forward. So you look at those guys and you say, that's my core. Now, I'm excluding Skinner because he's 31, but those 8 guys are really my core right now. And then you got to figure out, and that's a good core. Like, that's a solid, that's a playoff caliber core. You can add Skinner in right now. And then, okay, so you have, your Yost, Girgensons, Oposo. Okay, that's your 4th line. So what you got to figure out is, what are you have 3 forward spots left. How are you going to fill those? And you have 3 defenseman spots. How are you going to fill those? Right? And and then obviously goaltender is a huge problem. And this is where
that's the biggest problem, I would say.
Well, this is where I come into the Jacob Chyprin news. Jacob Chyprin, one of probably the number 1 defenseman currently available.
Right, the Coyotes.
Of the Arizona Coyotes. It's funny because Tage Thompson is from Arizona. I don't know why I saw that. So Tage is 25. I did get that right. So Jacob Chyprin, obviously the top available defenseman, for good reason. He's 24 years old. He's a left shot defenseman. I don't think he can really play the right side, but I don't think you're going to need him to because I think Dahlin's really switched over to be that right shot defenseman. I know he's left shot defenseman, but play the right side with Samuelson. And so the reason why Chyprin would be interesting, and it got reported that not officially reported, but they were talking about him, and they said the Sabres are actually considered to be a dark horse. So this is, an actual report of the Sabres being interested in him. Obviously, the Buffalo News got on it, and this is a really good defenseman. He plays on a really bad team, so some of his numbers, I think, are really impacted by the role he has to play as number 1 defenseman on a bad team, and 2, he's on a bad team. Like, when you don't play with very good players, you're not going to have very good team statistics. But when he was on a good, solid team, he put up really good numbers. 24, has 2 more years after this year at $4.6 million, so his cap's really affordable. I know that's going to be a little bit interesting from the fact of his good contract doesn't really fit into the Sabres timeline of in the next 2 years. Are you going to be really going to win a Stanley Cup? Probably not.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't put any money on that.
But that's why you might see them get outbid by a team like Edmonton or a team maybe a little bit closer that that $4.6 million really helps their cap space to get a top 4 defenseman. But the Sabres have a lot to offer. I think that would be interesting. You have all these forward prospects.
Pick a number 1 ranked prospect pool in the NHL preseason.
Pick a forward prospect that the only 2 forward prospects that I think they should be guarding is Kulich and Savoy. Mm-hmm. Pick anyone else. Pick one of Middlestad and Olsen, whichever one they like more. Protect your 1st round pick, and let's get this deal done.
If we can get Middlestad out of here, to me that's an absolute win.
Well, this is my thought process. If you do like kind of a mid top, even if you're like, screw it, we won't protect our first lottery protected. We'll top 10 protected, which is a greater chance of losing the 1st round pick to entice them. Yeah. And Isaac Rosine or Oslin, one of those, maybe your Swedish forward prospects, get the deal done, because what it does for you is you add a top 4 defenseman that now you could have your top pair, Samuelson, Dahlin. You could have the Jokiharju and Power pair because Power is just a god. And you have Jacob Chyprin, who, people are going to look at him and be like, oh my God, he's on the 3rd pair. But this is a guy that can play in your power play, can kill penalties, has a very good shot, and it's going to probably be your 3rd best defenseman probably on the team. I think he's going to actually be probably ahead of Matthias Samuelson in my eyes. But he would be a guy that then you could have, instead of having 2 pairs, you have 3 pairs that you could have out at any time. And it also doesn't stop you from being like, all right, we're only going to roll with, in the 3rd period, close game, hey, we're going to roll a 5 defenseman and Chychrun, you're just going to find work. Or we're going to have Power and Chychrun on this one, you drop Yavin Jokiharju. Like, you could mix and match during the game what you need. If you need a push, if you need, if you're going to cut ice time down the pairing, you don't have to cut Chikrin's ice time. You can cut down, someone else's. So I think he does a lot for you there, adds value, not in the long and short term, to be honest with you. And I think it adds value because if you trade Middlestat, you could get Krebs in here, who has been on the bench, healthy scratch, and I think that could also improve your forward group at the time, in the short term at least, and then we'll
Right.
see long term what happens if Krebs takes the role. But I think again, I think that's just this kind of a slam dunk move if I'm Kevin Adams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this article by Fansided right now. I did a little bit of research when I saw we were going to be talking about him, right? Because not the biggest hockey guy, more on the football side of things for me, right? But I don't know this who wrote this? Let's see, Sion Fox, that's his name, Sion Fox, right? Sorry if I'm butchering that, but he proposes that the Sabres get, Chikrin, how do you say his last name? Chikrin, in a 2023 mid-round pick, right? That's what we receive. But to get that, we would trade Peyton Krebs, 2023 first-round pick, and Jacob Bryson. What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know if I would want to trade Krebs because he has been riding the bench quite a bit. He's been a healthy scratch. Kind of want to see how he fits a little bit, and maybe see. I don't know. I feel like we haven't tried him out that much. You know what I mean?
I would still do it because I don't think Peyton Krebs is going to stop me from getting a top four defenseman. If I'm going to be completely frank with you,
yeah.
But no, I think I would try and push
Middlestat.
I think I would try and push a Middlestat and a different forward prospect than Krebs. Someone maybe a little bit further away from the NHL level. Just because Krebs is right here and you can step in immediately and play for Middlestat if you trade him, and then you get to finally get a good assessment of what he actually is.
Yeah.
So I would push that more than the trade that they're suggesting. But listen, if that trade is on the offer if that trade is offered to Kevin Adams, he should be currently trying to find an apartment for Jacob Chikrin right now. Then I'm serious. Like,
they should be putting him up. Yeah, putting him up by KeyBank right now
because Bryson's not nobody, but Bryson's a third pair defenseman at best. You're trading Krebs, who even I think he's getting, a little, mismanaged. Isn't like he's played with the house on fire, even when he's had the opportunities. And then the protected 23 first could easily become just a 24 first. And I think a Sabres first round pick has a lot of value because of the Sabres and they've suffered for so long. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Because I think an interesting conversation that has to be had is, if you can have one more big move, do you make the move for a top six forward, or do you make the move for the top four defenseman? You know what I mean? And I think
that is interesting.
And I think, I would say most people would be interested in the top four defenseman over the top six forward, based off the progression of Quinn Peterka and even Cousins for that matter. Of those guys have impressed so much in the short term. You're just excited for the long term with them. And also you have guys coming up soon, with Yuri Kulich, with Matt Savoy. There's not really a huge need to, add a top six. I think they need to add another center, but I don't think he could be like a third line center. You know what I mean? Kind of that kind of thing.
Right.
I don't think they need to make a financial or trade commitment to another top six forward. I do think defensively they don't really have another guy in their prospect pool other than Ryan Johnson, but Ryan Johnson may or may not sign.
Yeah, he's a question mark.
Even if he does sign, you don't know how big of a role can he really handle. So I would say the defenseman would probably be the bigger, the impact both short and long term, and then the trickle down effect of who you might get rid of in the trade might also help your team in the short and long term. So I think that would be it. I mean, I think the concern for right now for the Sabres is just focusing on the development of these players.
Right.
But also understanding that I think you have an obligation to the young guys to reward them for their hard work, and understanding that, this is an evaluation season, but just because it's an evaluation season doesn't mean you have to have your evaluations done by the end of the season. You could have them done right now. I don't
Yeah,
think. Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of games of data to show who should be out
and who
and
works and who doesn't, that kind of a deal. Yeah.
yeah, and who needs to be moved. And at this point, it's just going to come down to the Sabres, you know, making those moves. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, then with Matt Savoy struggling a little bit in the WHL, numbers a little bit down.
Hmm.
A little concerned, but I think he'll bounce back. I think so.
I feel like it's kind of just you got to get a bigger sample size. Players have their ups and downs, especially he's on the younger side. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like you got to give him a little more time to, you got to let the chicken marinate for a little bit before you just throw it on the grill. So I feel like we got to give him a little more watch time and just see how it goes from here. Because if if it's like a few months or next season and we're starting to see this as a pattern, like it's happening still, that might be where the red flag starts coming up a little bit, in my opinion. But right now, I feel like it's kind of hockey players aren't going to be rushed to the NHL. You know what I mean? Like that's just not how it's going to happen. He's got time. He's got time to work on himself and work on what he's going to do and work his way up. So I don't know if it's like a red flag at this point. It's like
No, it's something to be looked at.
yeah,
But Sam Reinhart, after he got drafted second overall by the Sabres, didn't have the draft year. The next year after his draft, he didn't have it because the year before. But
right.
man, I don't think there's anything to be concerned of right now. I mean, Kulich is playing very well
Mm-hmm.
for a guy, draft year +1. So the first year out of your draft year in the AHL to have a .67 points per game is very solid. One of the best. I think that's top 10 in that category. So again, he's played solid. I think you have other guys that have played really solid too. Austin's played pretty well. Rosine's
Yeah.
really finally getting the ice time at the AHL level that he wasn't getting in Sweden. So overall, I think it's pretty solid, but I think it does beg to ask the question of who is the Sabres' best prospect. And I think a lot of people would say going into the year it's Owen Power. Obviously, I
Right.
would say he's graduated.
I wouldn't call him a prospect at this point, would you?
No, I think he's done. I think
Yeah.
Paterka and Quinn, I think they're just going to be NHLers at this point in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just comes down to like who. I mean, they had a really good prospect pool with those guys. I think they still have a good one without those guys. It
Yeah.
just now becomes crowning who's number one. And I think people going into the year might have said Matt Savoy. And I
Yeah.
think with
I'm
his
not no.
struggles, I think he's still two. I think he's ahead of. I think Coolidge should probably be three. But I think the clear number one is the goaltender that plays for Northeastern, Devin Levi.
Yeah, yeah, I know. We talked about him last week on what the Sabres need to do, and it's either go for a goalie or wait for him. And I think they're waiting on him, and there's no question that he's going to be a major difference maker if he comes here to play, which I'm hoping he still will. So, uh, you know, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I
No,
really,
he's gonna sign here.
yeah.
There's no reason for him not to sign here. He'll sign here after the end of the year, and
Yeah, he had
we'll
a
be ready
press
to rock and
conference and
roll.
he said he was looking forward to it, and he met with all the guys on the Sabres, and it was something he was looking forward to. So, I mean, granted, take that stuff with a grain of salt, but I mean, I personally, that to me is going to be the chef's kiss, the cherry on top for this team. We're going to finally have some elite goaltending and be able to not have UPL in there and blow a two goal lead and go into overtime and lose a game. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing at this point, because with a better goaltender, you could really work around a lot of that stuff, like with the defenseman and that gaping black hole of a third line we have. You know what I mean? Like you can work around that with a better with a better goalie. You don't have to worry about it as much. You know what I mean? But I don't know. That's what I'm looking forward to. He's the number one.
Yeah, I think the Sabres just got to improve a couple spots on the roster, and those guys aren't. If they add another defense, high quality defenseman, I think the other spots that they need to upgrade are pretty easy solutions to find. So and then with goaltender, if they're going to wait for Levi, they're going to wait for Levi, but I still think they need to upgrade that in the short term as well.
Yeah.
Especially if Anderson probably retiring UPL, we'll see what he does in this time, and Comrie being banged up and kind of just a career backup. I think they still need to improve the goaltending for the time being. But
Yeah.
the last bit of news before we go into our predictions, Riley Sheehan's contract was terminated. Obviously, he did not want to go back to Rochester.
No.
I don't know what he expected. I think he expected to potentially win a job
I don't
for the
know.
season. Obviously, he got hurt, came back, went to Rochester. His wife complained. Came back up for one game, sucked. Was healthily scratched the rest of the time. Now back to Rochester, and now he wants his contract terminated. So good luck to him the rest of the way, but whatever, man. You're whatever player.
See, wouldn't want to be smell ya. I don't know. I mean,
we don't need you. So we don't need you to ruin the vibes.
No.
So let's go into predictions. So last week,
wait a second. What about the goat heads, Dom?
No, I forgot about the goat heads.
The return of the black and red. Come on, the '90s night. They won in spectacular fashion against the Blues too. It was the reverse retro I was excited for. This I was looking for, like waiting for. I remember we talked about this before they even announced it last year on the podcast, didn't we?
It's been rumored for years that they would return.
Yeah, and you were right. They didn't change Sabretooth's colors.
No, but he did go down from the rafters. So
he did.
That was a cool sight. I was at the game. It was an electric atmosphere. The jerseys are awesome. I still would say the Royal Blues are probably their best jersey, but this instantly becomes a top 5 third jersey in the entire NHL. And
I don't think they ever need to change their jersey again, though, because now you've got this third option that's like perfect.
I think if you have your standard royal blue and white, your whatever your reverse retro is for the year, and that this becoming your third jersey, I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, no, and it makes all people from everywhere excited. Some, you know what I mean, like to watch a game where they're wear their old Ryan Miller gear, you know, with the red jersey and everything. It's really
nostalgia.
Nostalgic, yeah, exactly.
Probably one of the best eras, if not the best eras in Sabres hockey. So
yeah,
it was fun to see and exciting.
Good that they got a win during it too. I mean, that was even better. So
yeah, a dominating one too. So
yeah,
it was definitely sick. It was definitely cool.
First time. Sorry to cut off the predictions.
I
realized we skipped the goat heads. I'm like, no way.
First time. I mean, it was good to get a win. First time since May of 06 winning those jerseys. So
yeah.
Been a long time. So now going into the predictions.
Yeah.
So obviously Mike is not here. He went 0 for 2. He picked Tage and Darlene. Joe, you picked Tage and Tuck, and I picked Skinner and Cousins. So I got a point technically because Jeff Skinner led the team with 5 goals and had the most points of 8. Obviously, he had a big 5-point game against Montreal.
Yeah.
And had another 2-goal game against St. Louis, and then had the goal yesterday against Tampa Bay. So
could say he was steaming. The ice was melting under his feet these past couple of games. He's really earning that $9 million contract, you know. So
another big week for the Skins. So I'm trying to think how many games they have. They play tomorrow against Detroit. They play December 1st at home against Colorado. Sunday. They have 3 games. Sunday at home against San Jose. So they have 1 on the road in Detroit, 2 at home against Colorado and San Jose. So they got 3 games.
Okay.
So let's get a player prediction first, and then we'll do our team record. So hit me.
All right, I'll go Skinner. Skinner goals again. I think the ice is still gonna melt under his feet. And I'll go Tuck for the points. Actually, I'll go Tage for the points. Sorry.
I'll go Quinn and Power. I think we're gonna have a youth movement to 3 games.
All right.
I'll go for the team record. I'm gonna say they go 2-1.
Yeah, I would agree.
They beat
2-1.
Detroit, and I think they beat San Jose, but they fall to the Avs.
Yeah, I don't think they beat the Avalanche. I'll go 2-1 as well. Well, I mean, we'll get Mike's stuff to have. We'll bring it up next time we do this with him. But so I have Skinner and Tage, and Dom, you have Quinn and
OP
and Owen Power. So that
my question is this: before I'm going to cut you off now.
Oh, okay, all right.
Who would you get with the go ahead right now?
Oh, I'd get Tage.
Tage.
Honestly, I'd get Tage because of the contract longevity at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
he's going to be here long term.
Yeah, and it's not like a jersey like you're going to get. Like, say, like, I know last year no one in their right mind would do this. Like John Hayden, like he was gone this year. Like that would be a waste of money, you know. But like, it's with Tage, you know, he's going to be around for that set amount of time and probably longer if he keeps playing like this. So, you know.
No, I think I would probably do Owen Power. OP.
Yeah.
The nickname of OP is just funny to me. Speaking of nicknames. For next podcast, we have a week. I'm giving us a week deadline. We had to think of a good nickname if they're still together for the Paterka Cousins Quinn line.
All right. Deadline a week.
I'm putting you a week's on notice.
All right, sounds good. Yeah. Well, if any listener out there's got a good idea too. I mean, leave us a message on the Anchor website. No question. We'll play that on the show and we'll give our breakdown, and you'll hear our nicknames next week. Dom, great idea. That is going to do it for our Buffalo Sabres topic for this episode of the podcast. But before we move on to the Would You Rather, this episode of the Buffalonian podcast is brought to you by the Cast Source Podcast Network, a podcast network built with and for entrepreneurs. We cover many genres, including sports, business, mental health, marketing, and entertainment. We feature the podcast shows such as Sports Bring People Together, Limitless, Savers of the Metaverse, and The Athletic Mindset. Learn more at castsource.com/podcast. And Dom, I've got the Would You Rather this week. So let me pull it up real fast. It's a little more lighthearted, not as statistically driven like the past couple have been. But here it is. Would you rather your team lose it on the very final play of the Super Bowl, like Russell Wilson lost the game, right? Throwing that interception in the goal line. Would you rather an interception in the end zone, like I said, or a missed field goal, like wide right, like the Bills? Like, what going into a game, if you had to lose, would you be on, like, would you rather the kicker miss the goal, or would you rather your team just absolutely flub up for a red zone interception? Like, what would leaving the stadium make the hurt feel less? Because the hurt's going to be bad either way. It's a Super Bowl loss in the last minute of the game. So,
Joe, geez.
no, it's a little morbid. Kind of hits home for the Bills in the 90s. So
I would say the missed field goal. I think losing by interception, because I think if Josh did that, I think he'd get clowned on. So I think I wouldn't be able to deal with that. I mean, if Bass missed a field goal, I think I could.
You could deal with it.
I don't know if deal if it's the proper word.
No, but Scott Norwood would live through
deal with it slightly more than I would if Josh do a game losing end.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree. If we had the opportunity and we were kicking for 3 points to take the game and win, I'd rather, have it go wide right than Josh throw a game losing interception. I just feel like mentally you can come back from a missed field goal, but I mean, I feel like Josh throwing an interception on the goal line that like Russell Wilson,
that would mess up his psyche and the whole team. So, I mean, I think at least you could come back from a missed field goal as a team if your quarterback throws a game losing interception.
Right. Well, I mean, you saw that for 3 more years.
They never got back. See, got back. Bills did 3 straight years.
Yeah.
Didn't get the job. They got back.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Just I took the Would You Rather in a little different direction this week, but
real morbid one.
Real morbid. Yeah, but without Mike here, Dom, I think it's your time to do trivia. So
it is my time to do trivia.
Hit me with some questions, buddy.
The backup is in.
The pinch hitter.
Question 1, Bill's question. Okay. We saw our boy Jerry Hughes lose it on Sunday, kicking over a Gatorade jug in Miami as his Houston Texans were getting absolutely rocked by the Miami Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
My question is this: where does Jerry Hughes rank on the Bills' all-time sack list?
I got to remember that, because I got to think back now, because he was a penalty magnet, but he was uber aggressive when he was younger on the team. I'd say 7th.
No. I'll give you one more guess.
Was I close or no?
You're pretty close.
Was it top 10? No, that would give it away. Don't tell me that. 10.
He's 4th.
Oh, wow. He was higher than I thought.
53 career sacks, behind only Hansen, Aaron Schobel, and Bruce Smith. 4th all time.
Not bad for Jerry Hughes Jr.
Yeah, come on. Can't forget that. Question 2. Who was the leading... obviously, this is Sabres question.
Yeah.
Who is the leading point scorer on the Sabres when they last made the playoffs?
Oh, God.
The early 2010 Sabres.
Early 2010 Sabres. Yeah, I got nothing, man. I got nothing.
You can't name one?
No, the early 2010 Sabres, I played NHL 12. That was
How about this?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be really embarrassing. Okay, if I give you his initials, do you think you'd be able to answer it?
Maybe.
TV.
Oh, wait. No, I don't know. I'm not confident enough.
Thomas Vanek. Oh,
God, that's what.
32 goals and 73 points in 80 games was actually 21 points more than the next closest player, which was a tie between Drew Stafford and Mike's boy, Jason Pominville.
Jason Pominville. I honestly, you said TV and Thomas Vanek popped in my mind. I just wasn't confident enough to lay that down as the final answer. So,
all right. Question number 3, kind of more of a world question. Obviously today, with the USA beating Iran 1-0 to advance the knockout stages in the World Cup. First time since 2014, USA have advanced the knockout stages. I've seen 2018 they did not qualify for the World Cup. Question is this: who did the USA face in the round of 16 in 2014?
I'm trying to think. Was it? I'm gonna just shoot in the dark here. Okay, fishing in the dark like Tage Thompson. All right. Argentina.
No.
I'll
give you a hint. Mm-hmm. They lost.
Already this year?
No, they lost in that game.
I'll
give you an actual hint. Not in that continent.
Okay.
It's a country down that continent.
Is it? I'm trying to think. Was it? I have no idea. I don't follow soccer. I would not. Mike might have gotten that question.
Name a European country. How about that? I'll give you
Germany.
No, they were in Germany's group. They lost to Belgium 2-1 in extra time.
That's tough. See, I wish I followed the World Cup more, honestly. Last time I really
still have an opportunity too.
I still do. I could finish it out, but I mean, the most soccer experience I have is playing for the Tim Hortons Timbits when I was a kid, and then getting penalty cards left and right and slide tackling in FIFA 15 playing against my brother. So I mean that's the extent of my World Cup and FIFA knowledge, but miss Mike on the trivia. He would have been able to get that soccer one. I feel like he follows it. So, being a soccer guy and everything, but without further ado, that's going to end this episode of the Buffalonian Podcast. I'm Joe Kelly, and today I was joined by Dom Loss. And Dom, how do you always end these, pal?
Go Bills, baby.
Go Bills.